Hello and welcome back to Planet Coaster. Ladies and gentlemen, today is going to be part 2 of Let's Build a Town Center, and things are going relatively well with this build, I would like to say. I am actually really happy with how much we get done in this particular episode. There are 2 or 3 more buildings after this episode that are going to need to be done before the actual town center itself is completely boxed in, so you could be anywhere around the town hall and you're gonna see buildings. It's gonna look like you're in a town, and I'm super excited for that moment, but that's gonna be in the next one. For today, well, today I build a few banks, I build a couple more shops, and I also start working on the area behind this building that I'm constructing at the moment, as well as the buildings that are gonna follow down from this one in just a little bit. And that area is basically a car park, as it is in the real-life version of this town. It is a car park, the proportions are slightly different, but I decided that I didn't want to just make it a car park, because a car park would be a little bit boring. It is still a car park, but I end up turning it into a little bit of a carnival or a fair. I put some tents back there, I put a carousel back there because that's going to bring people to the park, and you'll see that towards the end of the video once we get there. I have this really bad habit of talking about the end of the video right at the beginning of the video, which really doesn't make sense. It makes no sense whatsoever, but there you go. I guess I'm hyping you for the end of the video at the beginning. That's what it's gonna be. It's like when you watch an episode of Saturday Night Live and they're like, we got a great show, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. We have Bruno Mars as the musical guest, except this time it's a Planet Coaster video and I don't have any musical guest. So there you go. That was a good 2-minute conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the design of these buildings. To be honest, it is mostly just following on from what we did in the first part, which was every building is the same height, the roof is always the same, but the facade of the buildings is always going to be a little bit different. I'm sort of using the same mix of materials in a few different ways. Some of them have more new looking bricks, some of them have older looking bricks, some of them have a little bit of wood here and there, some of them have a complete wooden front like this one. But generally speaking, it was a case of just making sure every building had its own identity to some degree or another, and I am really happy with how the whole thing ends up turning out. I actually really enjoy the building after this one. This is the second building in this row. There are actually 2 buildings after this one. There's 2 more buildings to go in this row. This ends up being a row of 4 buildings. The 2 after this are, in real life, both banks. One is a Halifax and one is a Northern Bank, or I think it's like Dansk Bank or something like that these days, but I still call it Northern Bank. Either way, they are both banks, but I decided I didn't want to put 2 banks right beside each other, so one of them becomes, well, you'll see what it's going to become. The other one stays as a bank because it's a very distinct building, because it's very 70s. And again, you'll see that when we get to it. As for this building here, this is actually my least favorite out of everything I built today because it's just a little bit bland. I think it was a bad choice to use as much gray as I used on this building. So I might go back and edit this one a little bit and maybe change out the upper floor for a slight blue or something like that. The building next to it has a bit of green and red going on there, so this one could have a bit of gray and blue. It's still going to be a very cold looking building, but I think either a bit of blue or maybe a bit of red to complement the red in the logo of Monsieur Fritz, which I think might be a relatively decent idea. Either way, this building was just a bit of a worry, I suppose. It was that building for this build, and what I mean by that is every time I do a build in Planet Coaster, there's always one building that I end up putting together and it's just not quite perfect. It's not quite right. It's not quite what I want it to be. And it's the one building that always makes me go, oh dear, is this project about to fall apart? Now, fortunately, the project didn't fall apart and I didn't freak out and I didn't go, oh god, what am I doing? I do kind of have an idea of what I'd like to do to change up this building a little bit. As you can see, you know, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what this building ends up looking like. A couple of pillars go on the sides, but other than that, it stays relatively bland. And I'm happy to admit it is a relatively bland building. The only way you're going to ever learn from your mistakes is if you admit to them, and I will admit full well that this is a little bit of a bland building. But again, I'll come back to it in probably not the next episode. I'll probably come back to it between this episode and next, and you'll probably just see the differences in the next one. Speaking of this episode, it's going out a day later than I planned. I mentioned in part 1 that this was going to be either a couple of times a week or weekly as a series. I then think I commented saying that it is going to be weekly, and I think I commented in a couple of other videos here and there saying that it was going to be every Tuesday. Now, obviously, this video, if you're watching it on the day it's going out, isn't going out on Tuesday. It is a Wednesday. Basically, I may have gotten carried away playing Banished, and I may have left a little bit late to sit down and work on this because of a multitude of things, not just because of Banished, because I was traveling last week. For those of you that don't know, by the way, I was at the Planet Coaster launch event in London. I'll talk more about that in just a moment, but that was a little bit tiring. I got 3 hours of sleep on Wednesday morning last week, so like the week of the Planet Coaster launch. I got 3 hours of sleep that Wednesday morning, woke up around noon and went into the office to start working on videos. Then on Wednesday night, I got 3 hours of sleep again from like midnight until 3 a.m. when I had to get up to go to the airport and then fly to London and then attend the Planet Coaster launch event and stream for 4 hours and just be around London. I was awake for like 21 hours by the time I got to sleep that night. It was an amazing time, but I was very, very tired. So I've kind of been recovering from that. I took it easy over the weekend and only posted like 2 videos, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and I'm kind of easing myself back into things. I'm really enjoying the way I'm handling the channel at the moment, to be honest, but I might talk about that in an update or on Twitter or something, because I don't think this is necessarily the place to talk about general channel stuff. I will just say I'm really enjoying myself at the moment, and I appreciate that you guys seem to be enjoying the videos as well. Anyway, as you can see, this building here, which is supposed to be a Halifax, is currently a Cash for Gold shop, and that's not the only custom sign that I add to the town center in this episode. The next building, which like I said is also a bank, it's a very 70s building, is gonna get a custom sign. And opposite that on the other side of the town square is another bank, which in real life is a Santander. It isn't called that in my rendition of this town, is all I'm gonna say. And again, you'll see what it ends up being called. Now, like I said, this building here on the corner, it is another bank, but it's a very 70s building. It's rough concrete, big kind of dark windows. It's really, it's kind of the complete opposite of what I was saying in the first episode. You remember I was saying that in the early 90s there was a bombing in the center of this town and a lot of the buildings were destroyed and then rebuilt to sort of look proper, to look like they belonged here, like they weren't just rebuilt and made to look all modern. They were built to look like they fit in. This building doesn't do that. This building doesn't fit in. It really stands out. More so than I made it stand out for this build. I made it kind of blend a little bit. I added the roof to it. I made a point of keeping every building in this town center going around the town hall at exactly the same height because I love how the roof looks going across all of them. This building in real life, I don't think has that roof. I think it has a very slight pitched roof, but it is more flat looking than everything else going on. But I decided against that because I just don't think it worked with the theme I was going for in this, and I think it actually looks better with the sort of pitched roof that's kind of going up to almost round itself off the top, as you can see. I think it just looks better. So that's what I went for, and hopefully you agree. Hopefully you like it as well. You know, I like it. I think it looks pretty decent. Of course, adding some signs on there, actually using basically wooden balcony railings to create those dollar signs there. But I do absolutely like how it looks. We're skipping forward in time just a little bit there, and this is me beginning work on the building that is, in real life, a Santander. This building, my version of it, is actually a little bit more different to the real version than I realized at first. Because the real version looks kind of like an old sandstone building. It is quite tall, but it doesn't go that much taller than the buildings around it. In my case, I sort of copied what I did with the Just a Memento building, which is sort of visible to the left of this. And I added sort of a tower thing to the front of it. I just made it look like a more interesting building. And I'm really happy I did that. I think it just looks really cool on the corner. I like doing this occasionally where you do have that building on the corner that looks a bit different. And I had the benefit with this building as well, which was that this building actually does have a couple of entrances. One right on the corner and one to the left, which is sort of a wheelchair access part of it. Because this is an old building, you go up some stairs to get in the main entrance, and to the left of that there's wheelchair access. So I decided that what I would do is have the entrance in the corner, but then on the inside of that use the metallic wall pieces in black to just make it look like there's kind of darkness in there and like it's maybe not open or something like that. Basically, it's sort of using a bit of trickery to add a little bit of depth, but you know, you don't actually go in there. Then I decided that on the left side where the wheelchair access is basically where I'm just going to put an info booth. And that's the part of the building that people will go into and come out of. I thought it was easier than trying to get the path to work in the corner, because getting paths to work in the corner was a nightmare for the Gulpy energy drink building, which I think was like the second building we did. It was an absolute nightmare trying to get those paths to work, so I decided to not bother with that because I'd rather not go through that absolute nightmare again, so I just kept it nice and easy for myself. And I absolutely love how this building turned out. It was around this point that I was starting to feel really good about the project again, because like I said, I was doubting myself with the bland building from earlier. And then I built the Cash for Gold building, and I kind of looked at it and went, it's funny, it's silly, it's a decent looking building, but if I have to maybe scrap it, then that's fine. But I kind of did that and I was like, actually it's alright. And then I built the other bank and I was like, it's actually alright as well. Then I built this one and I'm like, you know what, I'm keeping this, I like it, even with the bland building. So that's one thing I will say, if you're ever building stuff in games like this, I guess give yourself a chance. It's something I don't do a lot. I often sort of criticize my work really heavily early on and don't give it a chance to develop into something cool. So I would highly recommend not doing that, because you might surprise yourself and you might make yourself a bit happier than you kind of thought you would. And I'm actually really happy with how this whole thing turned out. And at first, I wasn't necessarily planning on building as much for this episode as I did, but I'm glad I got done what I got done, because it puts us in a good spot for the next episode to start expanding these buildings and getting the backs on them, getting the stuff around the town center, getting some other shops in to close off the town center, and getting some stuff down the streets that lead off of the town center as well. And then I need to work out how exactly I'm gonna cap off the whole project, because obviously this isn't necessarily going to be the longest series I've done, but I do want to come up with a good way to make this thing look decent, and I want to come up with a really cool way to present this when it's done. And I'm thinking it might just have to be like a sort of little low camera angle tour of the whole thing to make it feel right. Because there were a lot of moments when I was done with what you see me constructing today where I just put the camera down to street level and I was looking around and going, this isn't identical. It's not a perfect recreation of my hometown. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this town build, if this is your first time watching it, is basically a recreation of my hometown in Northern Ireland. I would highly recommend going and watching part 1 because it explains it better than I'm going to. But I got the camera down nice and low, and I would sort of look around at the buildings and go, this isn't a perfect recreation. but it's captured sort of the essence, it's captured the feel and the mood of the town perfectly. And I don't necessarily like saying that about my own work. I don't like going, yeah, you done it, good job, but it really has captured just the feel of it. While it's not identical in terms of looks, the feel is there, and it's so weird. Because I mentioned in part 1 that I have tried building stuff like this in Minecraft before. And Minecraft is the last game I ever attempted to build my own town in. Except this time around, it feels a little more real. And it's weird. And I think part of that is, when I was building that in Minecraft, I didn't have any plans on sharing it with like 100,000 people. Or near 100,000 people. I keep bringing that up in videos because I can't quite believe that that's where the channel is. But I wasn't sharing it with anyone. And I wasn't like looking at it and going, oh wow, this is really good for me. I'm really happy with this project. But no, this time around, I guess it's a little bit different. Things have changed since I was playing Minecraft all those years ago. Things have changed in a rather interesting and wonderful way. Now, this structure I'm putting together here is basically a sort of statue plinth thing that is going in the square that you can see in the background there, sort of behind the town hall. Now, in real life, I don't think that exists. I can't quite remember what's there. I know there is a sort of pillar tower thing, and I think it is a fountain to a degree, but it's nowhere near the scale of that statue I put in there. I just thought that was a really nice thing to put in the center of that sort of open area. And it works. Now, this little building here, I don't know what it is about it, but I absolutely love it. I really, really do. There's just something, I think it was what I was doing with the wood, and the colors just worked really nicely. That sort of pale wood with the slightly more like peach kind of orange tone on, to highlight it. I absolutely love the look of this building. Admittedly, very shortly, I'm going to be changing that sort of peach orange color to a blue, because I realized I was putting the Cosmic Cow milkshake shop in here, and I was putting the signs for that shop on the outside of this building, which are very neon. There's a lot of pink, there's a lot of blue, a lot of white, and I thought, well, maybe I'll use the sort of light blue and see if that works, and it kind of did, and I kind of like it. Maybe not as much as the peachish color, but we do what we have to do, and I kind of wanted the color to match the contents of the store a little bit more, so I had to change it from that peach to a blue color, and I guess it kind of worked. Now, you might be wondering there why the side of that building had the rough concrete texture. I kind of figured that it just looked interesting, like maybe the bricks and the wood is obviously part of a facade, and then they didn't really do anything with that side because there's not a window there or anything really. So I just decided to leave it as is. Also, yes, I'm using swords as a way to support these signs. Sue me. Health and safety would have a field day, but hopefully they're never going to find out. But yeah, I decided to just throw a little detail like that in because that is a thing that you get. I don't know if that's like that in my town center. I don't know what's in that corner. But that is a thing that you sort of get. You know, occasionally you just find that space where the business has no interest in doing anything with that wall, so it's just a bit of rough concrete or something. And I thought it was a little bit more realistic. I like how it looks. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and changed the peach orangey color to that blue. I've added in some windows that are a nice deep purple color, and I think it actually looks really good. I really, really do. I'm really pleased with how the whole thing turned out. Then, of course, these slightly different windows with the purple shutters. Again, just making it look as good as I possibly can. Adding in some planters there as well, and I'm pleased with it. I really, really am pleased with how that building turned out. I was toying around with the idea of adding something to that wall, but I think in the end I end up settling for a couple of benches, a bin, and that's kind of it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's. Oh yeah, I added some vertical struts to this building as well, just to add a bit more detail. But then we skip forward in time to the area behind the banks, the cash for gold, and all that stuff I built at the beginning of the video, where I'm building a fairground. I call it a fairground, it's a market. Think of it as a very, very small market, because that is what it is. And this isn't something out of the ordinary. Now, it is in this location, but in my town, again, there are markets. That is a thing that happens quite frequently in the center of the town. But I thought to myself, hey, I need to get people into this park. Because it is Planet Coaster, and of course the only way there's going to be a lot of people walking around is if I have rides. So I thought to myself, hey, I know there's a car park behind these buildings, so why don't I go ahead and turn that car park into a bit of a market. I can put a carousel in there because it's not going to look completely out of the ordinary, and that will attract people to the park, that'll get them using my shops, and that's going to mean that we actually have reason for all of this to exist. People are actually going to be using it. It's going to look like the town's alive. And it worked. It absolutely worked. People start walking around the town. I, of course, have to make sure to detail this area a little bit more, but it absolutely worked. And what I'm doing here, I love how this looks. It worked. I'm putting in some lines that are like, hey, don't drive past this point. I put some white lines down the road. I even get lines for the parking spaces in the car park in a little bit. And that might be overkill. To be honest, it probably is a little bit of overkill. But I'm really pleased with it. I really am so pleased with how the whole thing turns out. Now there you go, that's me. I built my parking space and I just have to duplicate it over and over again. It's a little bit big. It is a little bit big, but I think it works. And at this point, it was basically just a task of adding more tents and stuff to the market to flesh it out a little bit and make it look a little more alive. That was pretty much it. It was just a case of making it look like there's more going on, make it look like it has properly taken over the middle of the parking lot. And I add some tents to the corners as well, just to make it look like it's not completely centralized, but I love how the market turned out. I really do. It was this was kind of when I started I shouldn't say I doubted myself. I didn't necessarily doubt myself, but this was a point when I was looking at the project again and going like, is the market maybe a bit much? Is it a bit out there? And I think in a sense it is. In terms of realism and in terms of what I was saying earlier where I've kind of captured the feel of things, I haven't captured the feel of the actual market at all. This definitely feels a little bit more fictional, I suppose, would be the way to put it. But I thought it was a really good use of the space, and I thought it kind of made sense. It means I don't just have a boring parking lot back here. I actually have something where people can go, and it looks a little bit more interesting than just an open lot of grey. Anyway, folks, hopefully you like it as well. There are gonna be some cinematics at the end of this video, as there always are. If you have any and all feedback, you can leave it in the comments below. And with that in mind, I'll see you next time. Great outro. Good job, me.